we like to kind of take that down to what we call the Intersite Funnel. So the 4 key steps that lead to a conversion, and then segment those steps down individually by device category, by landing page, by channel. Most neglected part of the funnel is always the on-site experience. There's a considerable amount of investment into your ad spend, into driving traffic, into your creative. But when it comes to the on-site experience, like the amount of like data-driven action that's being taken there is like super minimal.
Welcome to the DTC Insider podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisentul.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the DTC Insider podcast. I'm Brian Roisentul, your host, and today I'm joined by a friend of the house by now. I think it's the second time that we are doing an episode with him, but we've been in touch since, I don't know, forever, probably many years now. His name is Anthony Morgan. He's the co-founder and CEO of eNavy. Hey, Anthony, welcome back.
Hey, good to see you, Brian.
Good to see you too. Could you please tell the audience more about you and about the company? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so I am Anthony, the founder of eNavy. I started off in-house at an apparel brand. Brian actually did some media buying for that brand back in the day, which is crazy. And now I run an agency called eNavy, and we're focused on CRO. That's our core service. We work predominantly with Shopify stores, typically 8 and 9 figure Shopify brands. And so it's a little bit of background about myself and the history with Brian. It's quite crazy. I don't know. It's probably getting close to 10 years ago that you were initially doing some media buying with me.
Yeah, a lot of experience in this space. I got to my second camera now. I don't know. It's news. I have two. I'll return to my original camera in a minute. But basically, what I wanted to ask you is, what do you see that when you speak with these 8 and 9 figure brands, what are they struggling with? How would you define their 2025 and beginning of 2026?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think obviously there's a lot of different struggles that brands have gone through over the years. I think when we look at 2025, there was a mix of things. You had the tariffs at the beginning of the year and having to respond and react to that. But when we're looking at on-site experience, on-site performance, really the two most common issues that we see is for like an 8-figure brand, their like catalog has scaled. So they maybe added more collections, more products. And as a result, typically what happens is product discovery is on the decline. And what I mean by product discovery is the percentage of users that land on your site that actually view a product. So you've got a segment of users that are landing on the homepage. You've got a segment of users that are landing on collection pages, and they're not advancing to view products. You're not guiding them well enough. And it's oftentimes an afterthought. Sometimes it's thought through what the brand thinks the customer would care about instead of how the customer is actually thinking about finding the right product. And that's a massive issue that we see with brands. And then the other issue would be paid social. Oftentimes it's driving to a PDP, or even if it's going to a landing page, like a custom landing page, oftentimes it's not performing as well as it could. And so like product view to add to cart rate, product view to purchase isn't where it would be for this particular segment, especially when you segment it down to like new audience versus existing customers. That new audience typically is converting like a third or a fourth of the existing customers. And sometimes it can get masked over in terms of performance because you're getting a lot of repeat customers from Meta instead of new.
Yeah. So on the paid ad side, which is our wheelhouse, it's been definitely tough because of probably a couple of things, some socioeconomic reasons, of course. It's been a tough few years. Election year, the tariffs, both for brands, and the population inflation, recession, you name it. But then, of course, the privacy, issues, lack of tracking that started with iOS 14 in 2021. And we can see these days that is tougher. Something you said, it's interesting that you said that most paid ads go to the PDPs. You think that's a good thing? It should be used probably in certain cases. Where should ad goes, or how can we best test that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that we get a lot. The reality is if we're just focusing in on like paid social, let's say Meta, which is where most brands are spending the vast majority of their ad spend, it really depends on what you're selling. Like if you're an apparel brand and you're not selling like performance apparel or some like really technical apparel, there's no reason for you to probably whip up a custom landing page. Like, you're probably not going to get any value out of that exercise. You probably also have a larger catalog where instead of like you've got like a clear top, 5 or 6 products, you might have like a dozen products that perform really well, and it's
Right.
not going to make sense to have a bunch of landing pages for them. So it definitely depends on what you're selling. Like, oftentimes what happens is brands think, oh, we need to just set up a custom landing page because that's going to help performance. And they do that as like a Band-Aid fix, but really their product page experience is less than ideal. Oftentimes it's best to like really try to nail your product page experience, make sure that it orients well. So when a user does land there, they're able to navigate through, understand the product, understand the brand, and then ultimately take the next action that we're looking to take. And then if you're like really serious and spending quite a bit on paid social, and from a product standpoint it makes sense, then you can invest in like custom landing pages. But it just depends. Like, there's sometimes it makes more sense to go to the homepage or collection pages. Depends on how big your catalog is. It depends on the brand, the product. I hate saying it depends, but that's kind of the reality
But I
of
like
it.
it. But we can go deeper if you want on that. When do you think that makes most sense to? Because now it's the era of information. I'm not the first one to say this. We are all consuming a lot of information these days, probably way more than we need. And there's a lot of misinformation as well. And many people telling you, like, including ourselves, we are content creators as well. And we try to educate the audience. So we add to that noise as well, even though we believe it's signal, of course, but people are consuming all kind of stuff. Anthony says one thing, Brand says another thing, then creator number 1,000 says another thing. So some people say, just create how to do X great or in a great way in 2026. Create the listicle advertorials, like they make these generic statements that don't go anywhere. So let's give people some education information here. When do you think that it's a good or some good scenarios in which they can leverage landing pages, and which type of landing pages would work?
Yeah. When it comes to landing pages, like, our indicator for whether your paid social performance is like not performing well currently by like on-site performance standards, you might not be feeling this yet. Like, your ads might be scaling okay, but at some point in time, CPMs are going to go up. You're going to hit some kind of drag, and then this performance indicator is going to be something you need to solve. It's going to become a problem. Right now, it's just like slowly sabotaging your growth, but not at the point where it's like stalling it. If you know what I mean? And this is product view to add to cart rate, looking at paid social. So like, if we're narrowing in at like Meta, that segment, what percentage of those users that land on your product page are adding to cart? Anytime we see that below 5%, it's a big indicator that we need to fix the landing page experience here. Whether that's addressing the product page or that's creating a custom landing page, that's the initial indicator that there needs to be some like serious effort towards this. When it comes to when it makes sense to do a landing page, I'll give a few examples. We work with a brand that sells gym equipment accessories, and they have like individual products. In those situations, I would say it doesn't make sense to probably have a landing page. The price point of some of those products is less than like $50, and some of them are kind of commoditized. But we move into their like kits or bundles or some of their more expensive products, there is like clear differentiators on why you should select them and why you should select this bundle of products. And so you can create what we call like a hero landing page that's talking through ultimately the benefits and the outcomes of using their strength kit versus a competitor's strength kit. And so that's an example where you're still going to be using landing pages in certain situations, like your catalog ads are going to drive to landing pages, the PDP, I mean. And then you're going to be creating for this like hero product, you're pushing quite a bit of spend to a custom landing page and testing that out versus the PDP.
Would that be a bottom of funnel landing page, or it could be more of a top of a funnel landing page in that case?
In this situation, I would consider it like it's going to be direct response. So it's for really
Right.
like bottom of the funnel more than it is top of the funnel. It's not like a listicle or an advertorial. It's not like a 5 reasons why you should select our product.
Yeah. And I'm curious in those situations, how would you approach that? Like some brands we work with, sometimes they say, we would love to have, more education. So we know that, at least our way of doing things on Meta, let's say, we don't like creating campaigns that are not conversion oriented, because Meta
Right.
gives you a segment that is like traffic campaigns, awareness campaigns, you name it. It's like it won't give you the end customers. But on the flip side, if you run conversions campaigns against the top of a funnel landing page, that will be tough too. So how would you solve that situation? Because let's say you, from your end, you suggest a brand, let's educate the audience. Let's create these tutorials, listicles, whatever format to educate people with the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel landing pages. These days, in this era of paid advertising, where would the traffic to those landing pages come from?
Mm-hmm. When you're referring to landing pages, are you referring to like a top of funnel landing page in this situation?
This case, yes. Let's
Yeah.
say, as you said, top 5 reasons why you need these, whatever, 5 reasons why you should be consuming supplements or whatever after workout. So you're not mentioning the product from the get-go, but you get there through the article.
Yeah. When we decide to use those types of landing pages is based off of like the market awareness of the customer. And a brand could have like their core customer, their market awareness is here, or they could have a particular product that their market awareness is here for this particular product. And so in that situation, there's really like two stages that we would use that for. Typically, we don't like touch unaware very often,
Right.
but like problem aware, they know there's a problem, but they don't know a solution exists. Those can be a great option there because you can really press on the problem through education and then present the product as a solution. Or you have the next stage where people are solution aware. You can talk through like the different ways to solve the problem, and they know that there's a solution. There's probably a chance that they already are, subscribed or have purchased a solution, and they would need to change and shift over to this new one. And so then you're taking it from that angle instead of these people know there's a problem, but they don't know how to solve it. These people know there's a problem. They think they're kind of solving it, or maybe they're unsure if they're solving it with their current option, and you're presenting then your option as the solution to the problem. Those are like the two stages where we'd use some of those like top of funnel type plays for landing pages, and it can work well for your like TikTok is very top of funnel. These can be a nice way to keep that TikTok traffic intrigued and engaged, though you're not going to see the same conversion rates from that segment as you would like a meta audience. Everybody
Right.
knows that. If you've done TikTok ads, they're going to convert very low. But these
Yeah.
can be a nice play instead of just sending them to a PDP and you have like a 99% bounce rate.
Yeah. So you keep mentioning PDP, the product page, and that product page, when the traffic is sent there, of course, should be optimized. So of course, we won't be able to do a full CRO course on how to optimize the PDP here. But what would be the 101 PDP optimization like tips that you would give brands listening to this? Why? Because let's say everyone, watching this or listening to this, probably they are in the space. They are either brand owners, marketers. It's not that they don't know what a product page is or look like. Let's face it, most product pages look alike. They all use more or less the same template. You have a few images at the left, you have the title, maybe some review icons, and then the price, add to cart, UBP icons, whatever description. So what are some things that probably most of these brands are missing that they should be doing to make the most out of it?
When we think about a product page, the most important elements are pretty much everything near or above the add to cart button. If we look at heat maps or scroll maps, the vast majority of your users are probably not scrolling below that. Does that mean the rest of the information below that is not valuable? No, it's just less valuable, especially when we're talking about like paid social, where those users have a higher bounce rate. And if you just segment it to that, there's even less that are scrolling past the add to cart button. And so really nailing the add to cart button and above is important. And when you look at most product pages, there's not really a clear sales pitch. The user lands on the page, there's an image gallery or a slider with images, in some cases like very generic images, studio shots that aren't really pitching the product. Like I believe the first place that you have an opportunity to weave in a sales pitch is in the image gallery. A sales pitch doesn't always have to be copy. It can be imagery. Like for apparel, you are in many cases selling a lifestyle or something aspirational. And so how can you present that and communicate that in your imagery? Your product imagery, image gallery is a massive opportunity for that. And some brands they've got a bunch of studio shots that just aren't really doing the job. And then you scroll down past that, you usually get into a buy box, you have your product title, review stars, maybe a buy now, pay later, the price, and then you've got your variant selection, maybe size, color, maybe there's a size chart, and then your add to cart button. That's usually the typical experience that we see. And so really the only sales pitch there is the image gallery. And so what are the ways within that, upper part of the product page, the near the add to cart button and above, or near the fold and above, that you can weave in a sales pitch? Like what actually matters to your customers? What's the benefits that drive them to ultimately purchase? What are the outcomes that drive them to purchase? And that's the first lever, right? That's the motivation side. You have two levers in CRO: motivation, we want to increase that, and then friction, we want to reduce that. And so then with friction, there's a whole slew of other things you have to think about. If you're selling apparel, size and fit is huge. And it's not as simple as, let's just put a size chart on. There's so many questions that the customer's actually asking about: how does this product fit? How does this product look on me? Is there a model that is my size or looks like me? So I can see what that could look like. There are so many different ways that you can address that problem. And there's so many different problems that kind of stem out of size and fit, for instance. And so that's what I would say is like really focus in on the add to cart button and above. Think about how can we increase motivation, reduce friction from what we know about our customer, not what we're assuming about our customer. Like what does our customer actually say? What are the questions that they ask? What are the positive things that they're saying in reviews?
Where do you get that information from?
So, I mean, the first, like a great spot for understanding the benefits that customers are highlighting and the outcomes is in reviews. So if you've got a good amount of review data, you can mine that, pull out the themes, and leverage that to communicate outcomes that your customers care about, the benefits that they care about. Instead of just highlighting features and specs, lead with the benefit first. And then when it comes to like friction, oftentimes this is found in like your customer support ticket logs. What are they asking customer support? Are we answering that well on the product page? And not just answering it well in the FAQ that's on the bottom of the product page, but how are we answering it in the spot where the majority of users are actually viewing a page?
It's a good one, because we typically advise our clients to, or we do it as ourselves as well, to analyze, customer reviews, post-purchase surveys. But I actually never thought about the customer support tickets, and that's a great way of finding the bad things. Typically, they don't reach out to compliment you, right? So yeah, we'll find the bad things, but yeah, it's crazy how people are obsessed over some things. Like, I don't know, obsessed with attribution and finding the perfect, like what comes from where. And again, it's good to track things but to a certain degree, we all know that there's no single touch point, and the attribution tools are not perfect either. Even if you use server-side tracking, I want to, of course, get your thoughts about it, but they are not as focused on getting zero-party data that people leave in post-purchase surveys, in reviews, on social media, CX tickets, that gives you valuable information to improve your marketing offers and everything else.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Surveying is a massive part of what we do. Like review mining and customer support ticket logs are two places that you already have data, most likely. Not everybody's doing surveys. At least they're not asking good questions in the surveys. Not that asking attribution related questions are bad. It's just that's not going to help you solve these problems. And so you can get really pointed with your post-purchase surveys. You can even do on-site polling, where you're actually polling users in the buying process and understanding where they're at with a simple, like pointed question that's trying to uncover a particular data point about your customer.
I wanted to get your thoughts about that and some other, let's say, myths or not. And you just mentioned that one of them. So what do you think about that? You mentioned before they need to increase motivation and decrease friction. And sometimes there's a gray area for those of us that are not CRO experts, right? And it's like, will it add friction or will it be helpful? Of course, at the end of the day, probably we can test it. But doing I don't know if calling it pre-purchase surveys, little quiz, or just a question in a pop-up about what are you looking for today. What do you think typically, or what have you seen typically? Does it help or add friction?
Adding the surveying during the buying
Yeah.
process. It
Yeah, like
depends
a
on
pop-up you're looking for, and they can say like click on one category so you can point them in the right direction, like, or what you mentioned as well, gathering data while they're browsing on the website.
it it depends on how it's done. There's so many pop-ups on an e-commerce site nowadays. You've got an email opt-in pop-up, you've got a cookie consent pop-up, you've
Yeah.
got oftentimes like a loyalty pop-up, you've got then you said no to the email opt-in, so now it's over here on the
Yeah.
side, and then you've got this customer support little chat bubble. It's literally like a Russian nesting doll that you're just like trying to get through all the pop-ups to get to where you're wanting,
Yeah.
or to where you're wanting to ultimately, the actions that you're ultimately wanting to take. And so it has to be done well. It has to be done really like tastefully, and it depends on what you're trying to do. Like if you're, in the case of like an on-site poll or survey, in many cases we're trying to understand and get clarity on a particular problem or diagnose the problems that users are experiencing in a particular part of the shopping experience. And so that's something that has to be done tastefully. You want to send that to users that are actually engaged. You're not going to send that in the first 5 seconds or even 10 seconds. It's something that's probably going to come on, halfway through the average amount of time sent on a page. Or spent on a page. And so we're talking like 30, 45 seconds. It's then going to pop up. And it's not going to be full screen and, invade their whole entire little iPhone screen. And so, that's one instance. Then you have like email opt-ins where you can ask a question to collect some zero-party data on what they're interested in. This works really well if you have a larger catalog. I'm sure you know the benefits on the email side of how you can then segment that, but we like that data too on the CRO side because then we can leverage it to understand what are users saying based off of where they land, based off of where they're coming from, what are the trends that we're seeing in what they're interested in, and how can we then use that to make sure they're landing in the right place, make sure they're being directed to the right place. There's a lot of ways that data can be used in the process. And so it's all about how you do it. Like, think about it if you were the user. Would you want to have to go through all of these pop-ups or have these pop-ups like invading at the worst times?
Yeah, that's the thing. Each of us are different, and that's again those who are not professional in this space. That's why, of course, need to hire a professional like you in the space. But even if we think about logically, like it's like in some cases, if there are many options and I feel like I'm overwhelmed because I don't know where to start, I might use a hand and try to say, we're looking for this or for that. I don't know if you are, sell multiple products that are giftable, are looking for birthday gifts, wedding gifts, or you can like, if you're looking for, I don't know, plants, like indoor plants, outdoor plants, an arrangement for, I don't know, a flower arrangement for, again, a wedding or a event. So what type of event, right? So sometimes it could be a guide, but again, that's just me. Some other people might say, I don't want it. I got it, right? Depending on the education of that user about that brand or the products. So yeah, that's why I was asking about, some, data from some common themes across brands.
Yeah. I mean, common themes across brands. It's hard because brands are so different.
Yeah.
Like you have brands that have very small catalog, right? Where they've got less than 10 products and they've scaled to 25, $30 million. And you're going to treat that differently through how you guide them or how you survey them versus a brand that's got, men's and women's apparel and they've got, 500 products in their catalog. So that's the hard thing. Like there is no like, this is the right way to do it. I think the biggest thing with anything that we do is we're trying to diagnose and understand a problem or solve a problem with what we're implementing. Too often, the tactics are just like, you should do this because X brand is doing it, instead of like, no, we should do this because our customers have a problem finding X products, or we should do this because our customers shop in this way, they discover products in this way. And it's actually backed by data instead of like an assumption. Because usually what happens is when it's backed by an assumption, it oftentimes doesn't win and isn't valuable. It doesn't matter to the customer in the end.
Yeah. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that CRO or good CRO, let's say, is not only focused on conversion optimization, but also on maximizing revenue, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are the things that you see right now that because I always read things in these lines, right? Like on LinkedIn and everywhere else, but mainly on LinkedIn, it's everything is getting more expensive. CACs, like everyone freaking out about, increasing CACs, all this stuff. And everyone is focused on decreasing costs. That's not bad. That's something necessary many times. But the other lever is how to make more money on the back end to be able to afford those increasing CACs, right? And on the website itself, of course, after they buy, we have more, but on the website itself, we have some levers to pull to maximize revenue, and not many brands are benefiting from those. However, there are some that probably are more noise than signals, and some others are not. Do you have any examples of what levers are working these days? For some, it could be for some clients, some examples, some use cases, and what are probably more noise? It could be upsells, cross-sells, bundles, whatever.
Yeah. No, that is a good question, because I think what we have commonly seen, and we've seen the same trend for the last a long while, but especially as there's been pretty big shifts in Meta, in the way that Meta even targets and the value of creative. Most neglected part of the funnel is always the on-site experience. There's a considerable amount of investment into your ad spend, into driving traffic, into your creative. But when it comes to the on-site experience, like the amount of like data-driven action that's being taken there is like super minimal. And that's like a core part of your growth lever. And it's a core part of your funnel. And so when we think about some of the like common like tactics, we could say, that work for brands is, I'm going to go back to one of the first two problems that I spoke to at the beginning, and it's product discovery. Oftentimes what we see is a brand will over-index too far down in trying to improve their funnel. So they'll be like a few steps too far down, where the biggest bottleneck is actually further up the funnel, but they don't have visibility on it. And so product discovery is one of those where, based off of our internal data set and from our experience doing hundreds of audits, 94% of stores struggle with product discovery. Either their homepage or their collection pages aren't driving users to product pages at the ideal kind of target rate that we set. And the homepage in particular is like a pretty big issue. And so we have an example from a brand called Carnivore Snacks, where early on, like some background on the brand, they've gained a lot of traction through YouTube. They like partnered with Joe Rogan, and so they had quite a bit of traffic that was coming from YouTube, organic, landing on the homepage. They were even initially driving quite a bit of traffic to their homepage from paid social, and it was landing on a homepage, and like I think it was like 19% of users were advancing to view a product. So a considerable amount were dropping off after that initial step. But oftentimes we see is a brand will then just focus in on the product page, where that's not as big of a bottleneck as further up in the funnel. Or they'll focus in on like the checkout because it's closer to the dollar, and so we need to optimize our checkout. But that's even smaller subset of users. Whereas if we focus further up the page, we can start to push more users, and we will see a downstream impact. So in like this case for Carnivore Snacks, we really focused on like, I would say the like top 70 or 25% of their homepage. So the hero, the navigation, below the fold, like near the fold section. And that's where like most of the wins kind of came from. And we were able to improve their mobile product discovery rates for users that landed on the homepage by 21%, which had an 11% increase on average revenue per user. So we were getting more users to the product page, and more users were converting as a result of what we did across some of these core components in the product discovery process. And the way their funnel worked is it was homepage, typically to a collection page. We did have some direct product linking that we wove in. Before they were working with us, it was homepage to collection to product page. We improved that in some cases where their top products were just getting users straight to the product page because they had a few products that were clearly their best sellers. Most customers were interested in those. And then we made some improvements on their collection page too. But oftentimes you'll hear like in this e-com space is like working on your homepage or your navigation won't have an impact on revenue. And that's like far from the truth. Not only will it impact conversion rate, but it can also be used to impact average order value. Like product discovery, improving that has multiple impacts. When you improve that path, you can impact both conversion rate and average order value. And so that's an example. There's not a lot of tactics in there that I explained, but that's how we got to the problem that we needed to focus on, and then the areas that we needed to ultimately improve. And through some additional research and testing, 90 days, we were able to see that type of impact. And then we just moved further down the funnel. Like as we improved their funnel, we moved to the next stage. Okay, let's improve the product page. There's some opportunity here. Just fixing one bottleneck at a time.
So does this have a name? Is this Intersite Funnel or something like that? You mentioned that before the call. I don't have a clue about that. So
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah, so that's our Intersite Funnel approach. Every brand we work with, we process their GA4 data through the Intersite Funnel. And pretty much what that is we believe that conversion rate is deceptive and not really useful. It's a global metric that 90% of the time is actually influenced more by variables outside of the site than any changes that you make to the site. Just increase your paid social, you're going to see your conversion rate plummet, or seasonality will affect it. Consumer behavior will affect it. The market, the competition, that'll affect it. And so we like to kind of take that down to what we call the Intersite Funnel. So the 4 key steps that lead to a conversion, and then segment those steps down individually by device category, by landing page, by channel. There's a bunch of different ways that we can slice it up. The bigger our brand gets, the more we'll slice it up and segment. But that's a really important way to get context so that we can know, okay, we've got clear struggles landing to product view. Where is that coming from? Okay, they've got 50% of their traffic landing on a homepage. Only 19% of those are viewing a product. Mobile in particular is 80% of their traffic, and it's really struggling here. Now we have some context, and we can say, okay, we need to focus in on the mobile homepage experience. Instead of just guessing and being like, let's improve your product page because that's close to the dollar.
And I wanted to ask you something, but I've been curious. I don't know if it's something that many brands use and I haven't noticed, or if it's that they don't use it. And I want to know why, if you know the answer, of course. Hyper personalization, it could be the homepage, it could be, but yeah, typically listings, on the homepage. So you go to Amazon or any other marketplace, and the homepage is for you and for you alone, right? So many parts of the homepage, the product recommendations, everything is personalized for you. Here, what we see is recommendations, like mostly what we can identify as users, let's say, is product recommendations based on products that you have already added to cart or browse, etc., by plugins of these upsold apps. But do you see many brands implementing homepage personalization, for example?
No. I think there's really a few reasons why. The first reason is it's not easy with the like cookie issues, with like just the lack of good quality data you have on your users. It can make it difficult to personalize well. Most of the personalizations you'll see is like you previously viewed, or you may also like, which is like very basic personalization. It's not what's going to move the needle. And so that's the first thing, is it's difficult to do. And this plays into the second thing. For a lot of brands, it doesn't make sense to do it. It really depends on how big you are. If you're a 7-figure brand, it makes no sense to personalize. The only, like, it starts to make sense as you scale in revenue and traffic. So you have bigger sample sizes to personalize for, or you're like, okay, we know that this is email traffic. Like the best way that you can personalize as a like smaller brand is being intentional about where you're sending your different traffic. But actually personalizing the experience for like email users that land on the homepage probably isn't worth it. Maybe it's better just to create like a custom landing page. We got a promotion that we've got going on for holiday. Instead of sending it to the homepage, let's create a custom landing page that we can drive email traffic to. Like that's a situation that is lower effort. It's way easier to do, and you can actually do it well compared to like, oh, we're going to try to personalize so like this section appears or this hero appears for email traffic. So oftentimes it's not worth the effort for brands just because they don't have enough traffic in those segments. As you scale, it makes way more sense. For some brands, they've got a lot of new audience coming to their site. And so like one simple thing you can do is with Facebook audience types, you can actually identify who's an existing customer, who's a new user, and then segment by those. And that data is incredibly powerful. Like when we're talking large brands that are, 9 figures plus, they've got massive segment of repeat customers that are super high intent, that convert really well. And sometimes that's coming from Meta and it's inflating Meta's conversion rate. But when we remove that existing customer and we're only looking at new, the conversion rate looks drastically different. And the way that we can attack that, personalize, test to ultimately improve that experience is way more powerful when we pull out those existing customers that are ultimately inflating, and they don't really need, sometimes they just need a really stripped down experience because nothing's holding them back. They've already purchased, they know what they want. So that's the one area where it's one of my favorite ways to start to do personalization is with audience types, with Meta, which most brands aren't doing it, but it's one of the easiest ways to actually do it. And then if you have a large subset of like customers, getting them logged in and using a tool like a Revo so they stay logged in, that's another way that you can personalize and pull data from Klaviyo. And those are like the three most common ways that we personalize when it makes sense. But for most brands, like if you're sub, honestly, even 50 million, it might not make sense to personalize.
What about bot traffic increase or AI traffic increase, both, how are you dealing with that these days? Is that a thing like affecting, again, surface stats or top surface or layer stats like conversion rate or some others, bringing up sessions?
Oh yeah, it can really muddy up your data. The most common, like two of the most common segments that we see bot traffic is desktop direct. There's typically a lot of bot traffic. One of the interesting things that I've seen recently, and this is probably agent activity, is in the past, we would see bot traffic. You could clearly identify it as bot traffic. It would have a really high bounce rate, really low average time on site, really low engagement score. And you knew that it didn't advance to another page. It was probably bot traffic. You kind of drill down to a few other segments like browser or screen resolution to say, okay, this segment of users is bot traffic. Let's filter it out. Now what we're seeing is they're actually completing event action. They're moving down the funnel in some cases. They're not purchasing, but oftentimes they'll get all the way to checkout. And I don't know if it's agent activity, but it's definitely not human activity because the like progression rates are still incredibly low, but there is progression that's happening in some of these subset of users. So that's one area is like direct desktop, and then the other area is Klaviyo. Klaviyo has quite a bit of bot traffic where bots are signing up for your email forms and then you're sending it out to bot traffic. I don't know if you experience that at all on the email side of things, Brian, but that's something that we see often. It's like those two segments where there's the bulk of bot traffic.
Question I have for you is AI. We cannot not talk about AI, of course, these days and how it's affecting the funnel. There are many unknowns when it comes to AI because we don't know what's really going to happen. It's the first time the playing field. We don't know if it's going downwards, upwards, left, right. So without clear roadmap ahead of the context makes it hard for many brands to have a roadmap ahead for them, right? In this case, we are entering an era. I don't know if it's going to be this year, next year. Nobody knows about that. Like the mass adoption of commerce, and before that, the mass adoption of conversational shopping. Meaning that purchases end on ChatGPT. I know this already started to happen in a small fraction, of course, a small percentage this year or last year. But how do you see this affecting the industry? Fewer clicks, not humans, brands not even going to the website, agents reading the website, even if it's ChatGPT, Gemini, etc.
Yeah, I'm one of those voices that is, do I think it is something that you should be investing in and planning for? Yes. Do I think that in 3 years or even 5 years or maybe even 10 years that agentic commerce is going to be 75%, 75% of what happens in terms of e-commerce transactions? I don't. I don't think it's going to gain that type of momentum. Do I think it's going to become a decent segment of users and purchases and in your customers? Sure, no doubt. I do think that it can become, 15, 20%. But like if we just think about e-commerce I think is like It's like 20 something percent of retail in the US, and it's been around for a while now, like 20 years at least. And it still hasn't gotten to 50, 70% because there is consumer behavior and humans that are ultimately the ones that are completing that action. Even if it is an AI agent, there's a human that's driving the agent to do that. And so there would need to be a massive shift in consumer behavior and user behavior to see agentic commerce have the kind of impact that I hear a lot of people saying, like, your website's going to be pointless. It's just not, that's not the reality. Do I think it's going to have an impact? Should you be planning for it? And if we go to like what I think you should be doing, I think the biggest thing is you got to move more upstream with how you're thinking about your brand and your experience. So instead of just thinking about we have our ads and we have our on-site experience, there is going to be more upstream from that that is having an impact on, is AI recommending you? Do you actually have positive reviews beyond your website? How is Reddit talking about you? How are you talked about throughout all different kinds of social? How are you talked about in all the different ways that AI is pulling information about brands, about products, and about solutions? How are you influencing that? And so that's where, like, I think a lot of the thought needs to start to go towards, but I'm definitely not a doomsday. Your website is going to be
I mean,
useless in 5 years.
I always say something, no, the classic saying that goes this way, like TV didn't kill radio, either online didn't kill offline. Quite the opposite. I know many brands that open brick and mortar stores to speed up their delivery, their shipping, and pick up points and those stuff. And I don't believe that this is going to kill websites per se. And forget
Yeah.
about agent commerce for a minute because I'm with you there. It's going to be a while probably. The thing is, conversational commerce. It might happen also on your website. We mentioned, when we were talking about all the noise that these multiple pop-ups that we see when we land on a website, all that noise that they create. One you mentioned was a chat window or widget. So that might be an AI agent, the same way Sidekick for Shopify works. And it's great actually. I hated chatbots. I hate when I call some or I speak. Here we use in Argentina WhatsApp, and we get a WhatsApp, AI bot. Press one for that. Press two. Now it's a conversation. Now I rather talk to, before it was talk to a human, talk to whatever. Now it's like I want this because this solves the problem, unless it doesn't, right? So what happens when commerce is more of a, I believe we are closer to happen through, again, in a small percentage, but to happen through conversations, even if it's on the website or on ChatGPT or similar.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the same thing exists there is, where is AI pulling information about your brand, about your product? And I think the one thing that remains true, no matter how e-com shifts, is, or I guess like the two things, is know your customer and have a damn good product. As I think as AI has more of an influence on commerce, having a good product is going to be even more important. For many years, you could throw up an ad on Facebook, didn't even have to be a great ad, to an okay product page. But as long as it was a hot product, you could get like an insane amount of sales. It might not even be a good product. Like, customers may have actually hated it, didn't do what they wanted. That's not going to be the case anymore as AI continues to influence, whether it's through conversation, whether it's through agentic commerce. Knowing your customer and having a good product is going to be key. And I don't think you can have a good product without truly knowing your customer and using that data to feed how you're developing and improving your product, how you're communicating about your product, because what you're communicating about your product is what's going to influence your conversational AI on your website, agentic commerce. So those two things are going to rise to the top as more important than they've been in the last like 10 years of ecom.
Yeah, I think, as I agree, fundamentals still
Yeah,
matter.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. They become even more important, I think.
yeah. Anthony, I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot personally. I think it was, you shed light into many things that probably are an unknown for many people, that are not coming from the CRO space, but they all want the same. They want to maximize revenue. They want more people to convert. And they want to win, right? So, So thank you for coming. I appreciate it. And before you go, please tell the audience where they can go to find more information about you and eNavi.
Yeah, so enavi.co. We have not purchased the .com. It was way expensive, so make sure you go .co, C-O. You can learn more there about eNavi, and then I post a lot on LinkedIn, or at least I try to. And when I do, it's all about e-commerce growth through the lens of CRO and growth experimentation. And so if you're curious about that, that'd be where to connect with me on LinkedIn, just Anthony Morgan, and you'll find me. There's not a whole lot of other Anthony Morgans out there.
Amazing. Anthony, thank you again for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.